indictments, and also, not to be overlooked, an extraordinary statement from Christopher Wray and the FBI that they overlooked a very specific tip on January 5th about the threat from Nicholas Cruz to murder and mayhem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have these two dueling stories, one of which, of course, speaks to our presidential election and our current politics. We've gathered together quite a group of analysts and our own reporters. I'm here in New York with Nicole Wallace, among others, former communications director in the Bush White House. You've had a chance to look through this. You've had a chance to talk to folks. I've heard this called an asymmetrical, psychological and electronic attack on the United States. I've heard it said that, like 9/11, entirely differently, but like 9/11, it used our own system on us.
Yeah, General Hayden called this a political 9/11 when describing sort of the scope and the impact, and the fact that it was something that we hadn't imagined possible. That was part of why it was possible. I talked to a former federal prosecutor in contact with this White House who said that he would make two things abundantly clear to Donald Trump, and up or down in his inner circle. It's hard to know the kind of week they've had. One, Robert Mueller took the evidence against these 13 Russians to the grand jury, and they returned 13 indictments. The notion that Americans don't care about Russian interference, the notion that an American jury can't be presented with evidence of Russian meddling and deliver indictments is false. Donald Trump, I would be surprised, and it would be foolish for him to continue to suggest that this is a hoax, thinking that people don't understand exactly what the Russians were capable of doing when it comes to our democracy. The other piece is a little sort of inside the justice and intelligence community that's been under attack by Donald Trump almost since the day he won the election in November. This source said to me, this is Bob Mueller sending a very clear and loud message to the White House that Bob Mueller is ending the debate on behalf of the intelligence community, on behalf of the American Justice Department, on behalf of the FBI, about whether or not Russia meddled. Russia meddled, full stop.
In the public sphere, this now has to go through a series of filters. We are the first ring of that. By tonight, by tomorrow, what will it look like? And why do you think today?
Listen, I think that with every new wrinkle in the Mueller probe, we have more questions, not more answers. I mean, I remember being on the air when George Papadopoulos, and you and I have talked about this on and off the air, the guilty plea from George Papadopoulos didn't answer any questions. It just raised new ones. Well, who did George Papadopoulos tell about his contacts with Russians? More recently, Carter Page, a figure that became really an unwitting eye of the storm in the fight between the White House and the FBI over the release of the highly politicized Nunes memo that told a narrow and distorted view of a surveillance application. The FBI wanted to surveil an American. We now have more questions about maybe one of the theories they wanted to do that is because he was talking to one of these 13 Russians. We don't know. But in terms of how this gets filtered down, it is possible that there are more questions than answers after today.
Two questions before I bring a former assistant director of the FBI in. If you're a communications director in this White House, what do you think they'll say, and what would you counsel them to say?
Well, listen, the communications director in this White House, wittingly or unwittingly, is a witness in the special counsel investigation. So I don't know if that hampers her ability to counsel the president. You know, in the Bush White House, when there were people who were witnesses in the Valerie Plame leak investigation, they didn't counsel the president on how to respond on the day that Pat Fitzgerald delivered the indictment of Scooter Libby. So I don't even know if this White House communications director is acting as an advisor to this president when there is breaking news from the special counsel. So I don't know who has the job of telling the president how to respond to news like this. In the White House in which I worked, I would have been recused if that was me. But whoever is advising him, I think would be wise to take this former prosecutor's advice to heart. I also think that Rod Rosenstein in his press conference was not speaking to the nation. He was speaking to the president, because he said over and over again, there's is nothing in these indictments that suggests that anyone on the Trump campaign knew, and there is nothing in these indictments that suggests that they did anything wrong. I don't think that's I think that is a message and a reassurance needed by one person, Donald Trump.